All right, so what I want to do right now is I want to just create a new file for us. I'm going to call this one, I am going to call this one usernames.html. Okay, let's paste our file in here. All right, so what do I want to do? I'm going to collect a username and I'm going to add it to a list. But what I'm going to do that's a little different is I'm going to collect an array of arrays, or I'm going to put things into an array in an array. Why am I doing that? I'm doing that one to just show you that you can put arrays in arrays. It's really useful. I don't know if you've ever played Battleship, but the whole idea of, like A4, that's essentially an array and an array, or it's two arrays. So yeah, that's how you can like recreate games, by doing arrays and arrays. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna put some user information into arrays, and I will then show you how to do it what I would call the correct way. But this is more exploratory than anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and in the body here, I'm gonna create an input box. I'm gonna say it's ID equals first name. I'm gonna put actually I'm gonna put first name. I'm gonna do a paragraph at the end. P. Okay, so then we'll do the same thing for last name. Last name, all right. And then we're gonna put a button, right? And the button will say add to registry. Sure, let's do add to registry. All right. I, of course, will put paragraphs around that just because it's the right thing to do. Save it. Let's go ahead and open that page up. Yep, first name, last name, add to registry. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple things here in our JavaScript. First, let's set up a couple things. So we're going to do a constant user names equals bracket bracket, because we're going to start at blank. All right. Then we're going to create a function that essentially that takes the values of first name and last name and puts them into an array and stores that array in the user names array. Why am I doing that? Because I'll be able to get a list of usernames and I'll be able to access them through different ways. This is a good example to show how we access arrays and arrays. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and create my function. Function, what is it going to be? It's going to be get usernames. And what am I going to do in get usernames? They are just like blowing leaves out there at 5 o'clock. So get usernames. And what am I going to do with my get usernames? First things first is I'm going to set, I'm going to get the value of first name. So remember it's dot value. So I'm going to say let first name equal document dot get element by ID, parentheses, quote, in this case it's first name, dot value. I'll do the same thing for last name. Last name. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say constant username equals bracket. We'll do last name, comma, first name. And then how do we get that user name, the single name, onto the array user names? Notice this is singular, this is plural. I'm doing that. This is something that I've done as a standard. You know, if I have an array of a bunch of things, I will pluralize the name of the array. And if there's a singular item in it, I will, you know, call that by the singular. We use the push method. So I can do user, so I have to do user names dot push parentheses what username. So what's going to happen is that the username is set to last name, comma, first name. The user names, my sort of like list that exists as a global, right? It sits outside of the function, will push my value here, username. And then what we're going to do after we do that is we will do console.log parentheses user names. I have to add this to the button. Get user names. Save it. Go here, refresh. See our JavaScript console. All right, so first name is Greg, last name is Walsh. Add to registry. Get usernames, add to registry. Get, oh, I forgot my parentheses there, refresh it. Do you know what happened? I did onClick equals get user names, but with no parentheses. So instead of it treating it as a function, like go do this thing, it just looked at it as a variable, and there's no value for the variable, so it didn't do anything. Okay, let's try again. First name, Greg, last name, Walsh, add to registry. So I have one here that's Walsh, Greg. Now let's add a new one, and we can do Kippy and add to registry. And so now there is a Walsh Greg and a Walsh Kippy. And then we might want to add Buddy, who's actually French. His name was Ducat. Add to registry. So now we have Walsh Greg, Walsh Kippy, and Buddy Ducat, etc. So if we keep doing this, what we'll start to see the cat, add a registry, and finally these are all the cats we've had through our lives. Okay. It just kept adding there. So I'm able to, as I go, I'm able to add to this. And you can see now it almost looks like a database, right? In that I don't have, or I should say I have these values and they're organized. And what we know is that usernames 0 is Greg Walsh. Usernames 2, for example, is Buddy the Cat. All right. So now what should we do with it that we have these values? Maybe we should have a new button. And that button is output usernames. And so I would do maybe an on click. You can't see that. So I have an on click. I'll go to the next line, even though it'll stay up, the buttons will be next to each other. On click output usernames, on click equals we'll call it list usernames. And how we're going to do this. Well, let's create a new function. List usernames. Okay. One thing we're definitely going to need is we're going to need an area to put the list. Equals user equals, we'll call it list area. I'm trying to make different names. I know that it sounds weird sometimes. So we'll make a list area. And what do we want to put into our list area? We want to go through usernames and put it into the HTML down here. So we need to create a list. And one of the ways that we can create a list, or I should say one of the ways that we can go through the list is through, we could do a for loop, for example. A for loop is a good idea for a situation like this. There's other ways to do it, but so we'll do this. We'll do a loop to iterate through the array. Now you've done these before, you know, for let I equal 0 while I is less than user names dot length minus 1. Right, we showed that in the last video. I plus plus. Okay, so we have our setup. Let's do our brackets. Now, what do we want to happen? What we want to happen is something really simple. We kind of want to do our updating of our ID. So we want to do, all right, document dot get element by ID. Which one? What did I call it? I called it list area. Dot inner HTML equals, this is something I'm going to do that's a little bit different than I've probably talked about before. I'm going to actually copy and paste that again. And I'm going to say take what's currently there and add to it, you can see that, yeah, and add to it what? Add to it user names, what do I call it? User names 0. So that means, oh, sorry, I, right? So that means get the index of where we're current, because we're iterating through, so it's going to move through a bunch of them. And then what do I want to do? I want to do 1, and I'll show you why. So that's going to pull the second value the first name, and then how do we get the second name on there? Plus, this is where JavaScript gets weird. Like, we're doing a lot of really long stuff here. Usernames 0, okay? Why am I doing it this way? So what's happening is that we're saying document.getElementID list area. So the HTML of list area, set it to the current HTML of list area, but add the first name, a space, and the last name. I am going to add a break. Okay. So that means it should create a new line. So let's go ahead and walk through this. All right, so we'll start this again. We'll do Kippy Cat. Add to registry. So we have one called Kippy Cat. We have Buddy the cat. We have Tiger, Lily, Kitty. And then we have Scooby Doo. Add the registry, and I forgot to do PD Cat. I'm sorry. All right, add to registry. So we have 5 entries. If I hit output usernames, Kippy Cat, Buddy the cat, Tiger, Lily, McGillicuddy, and Scooby Doo. Right, so this is, interestingly enough, didn't work. We skipped PD Cat. Why do we skip PD Cat? Because it should be as long as it's less than or equal to that, or less than just the length. Because we're always sort of like that one under. I'm going to save it. This is the whole problem with user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4, output usernames, user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4. If I add now a user 5, add to registry, output usernames, it does the whole thing again, which is not great. So we have to figure out, we'll have to create some flags or something to prevent it from doing that over and over again. But the good news is, I bet we can do this. We can just do equals. So set it to be blank, save it, refresh it. So now if we do user 1, user 2, user 3, output, okay, user 1, 2, 3. Now let's add 4 and 5. Output usernames. So it did it correctly. And the last thing that we would probably want to do as part of this is figure out how we can, let's do it instead of first name, last name, let's do last name, first name, and let's sort it. So if I do this, I can say user names dot sort. Okay, so now it's going to sort it by, you know what? What's it going to sort it by if it's got an array in an array? That's a super good question. usernames. Let's take a look at that. Let's see how this acts. Refresh. First name Alice Smith. How about Mr. Anderson? How about the Oracle and registry? And perhaps we want to name this one Biff Tannen. Add a registry. Output usernames. I did do it. Okay, Anderson, Biff. I did Cannon. Okay, Biff Cannon, Anderson, Cannon, Oracle, Smith. So these are alphabetical. It did actually organize them by the items in the array by the last name first, because don't forget the array is stored last name first. So that was what it looked at, and that's how it ordered them. All right, so this is the kind of stuff that you might want to do when you're prototyping. Might be something you want to do as you're developing different interfaces. We're going to talk later in the semester about how we can use some of these lists and such, arrays and loops in order to make buttons dynamically. So we can do cool stuff like that. What I want to do now is go over objects broadly in JavaScript, and then I'll show you how you can do some of these same kind of things with objects, so you can actually not just go with zeros. Instead of just going with, like a 0 or a 1 for last name, first name, you could actually put username I first name and username I last name, so you can call it like an index. So let's go ahead and watch a quick video on how objects work broadly, and then we'll go through some demos that way.